All right, Cycle 2, Week 3, Saturn's rings. Now the Van Cleve book has basically the entire thing is making this, where you put a pencil in and you spin it and you can see that it makes circles. And so it's supposed to demonstrate how Saturn's rings, even though they're made of little rocks that are obviously separated, because they're moving, when we look at them, they look like rings. So what I did was I went ahead and made one of these per class, and you can use this during your discussion. The Cornerstone lesson plan goes into, I just think it's much more interesting what they get into talking about Saturn and using some pictures, some actual pictures of Saturn. So that's what we're going to go with. So this is using the Cornerstone lesson plan. Every student is going to be paired and given a copy of this sheet. Now, if you look at it closely, you can see the dots that the rings are made up of. So that's what we're going to be focusing on for this first part. You're going to talk about the rings, and you're going to talk about which ring seems the brightest. And see, they're labeled here so that we can, even the littlest guys will know A, B, C, D. And which seems the darkest, which rings are brighter than the others. So this is going to allow you to talk about how the white spots are able to reflect or are bounce back, and they're scattered light, and absorb dark areas absorb the light. So there's a little short paragraph there that kind of explains that. And then in pairs, you're going to have the students each take turns holding this sheet in front of their chest. And at first they'll stand pretty close to one another, and they'll look and see if they can see the dots that are made up of the ring, that the rings are made up of. And they probably will be able to at that small distance. And then they're going to move apart. Well, at first they're going to switch and take turns. They're going to take turns each holding this and seeing if they can see the dots. And then they're going to move the image by backing up. Yeah, there's lots of discussion here about what color the rings are and all that stuff. And I think this, when you're doing this and you're seeing how even though they're made up of little tiny dots, they still look like a ring. This would be a good time to just do this little demo and say it's kind of like this. We have here a star that has lines on the ends of it, but when we spin this star, it looks like a circle that has rings, black rings. If you don't hold it so flat, it doesn't fall off. So that would be a good time to show that if you want to. So yeah, right. Then they're going to move across the room from each other, and they're going to be able to see that obviously they cannot tell that there are dots anymore, and that the rings start blending together a little bit more the further away that you get. Then the next part, you're going to actually be looking at these actual images of Saturn and talking about each individual image. So there's this one, and it gives you some discussion points and some questions to ask. There's this one where there's a shadow, like Saturn itself casts a shadow over its rings. And there's this one where you're going to end up talking about how just based on the positioning of Earth in relation to Saturn at different times of the year, it'll make the rings look different. And then it's going to have you do a demonstration where you hold a paper. It doesn't matter what paper, so it can just be this paper. You're going to hold a paper like this and say, "Can you see this? Can you see this very well, this paper?" And they're saying, "Of course we can see it." And then you're going to stand like this and say, "How about now?" And they're going to say, "Well, we can see it less, like the paper looks smaller." And then you're going to stand like this. And now all of a sudden, it's like the paper that's still the same size and still there is just a little tiny sliver. So that's just another good illustration that can demonstrate how the positioning of the rings of Saturn, depending on when we're looking at it, can affect how it looks to us. So that is the whole week, is just talking about Saturn's rings in these various ways. So this might be a week where if you're not filling up your time, you might want to use our lovely devotional book that we have this year, where there will be a certain one that goes with this week, and that'll be separate videos that I make about those. Thanks, guys.